this hour. US President Donald Trump announces that he will block Israel's West Bank annexation plans, declaring it is not going to happen. He also signaled progress on Gaza deal and hinted at a possible peace agreement. Yemen's Houthis claim Israeli airstrikes killed 2 and wounded 48 in Sana'a, calling the attack brutal. This comes as civilian casualties mount in the rebel-held capital amidst escalating tensions in the region. Iran and Russia have signed a $25 billion agreement to build 4 new nuclear power plants in southern Iran. The deal comes as sweeping UN sanctions on Iran are expected to return, raising global concerns over nuclear proliferation. Russian President Vladimir Putin met IAEA Chief Rafael Grossi in Moscow to discuss nuclear energy, non-proliferation and safety. Grossi expressed gratitude for the support, highlighting ongoing efforts in nuclear security and global cooperation on energy challenges. Former FBI Director James Comey has denied criminal charges, claiming innocence after indictment for false statements and obstruction. President Trump celebrated his indictment, calling Comey one of the worst and urged further action against other critics. And President Trump announced 100% tariff on branded and patented pharma imports starting the 1st October 2025. New duties also target kitchen cabinets, furniture and heavy trucks as part of latest trade move aimed at boosting domestic manufacturing. China has urged the United States to ensure open, fair and non-discriminatory treatment for TikTok and other Chinese firms. The statement follows President Trump's executive order backing a proposed deal for a US version of the popular video app. Well, the Philippines has evacuated hundreds of thousands. A severe tropical storm Bualoy lashes the country, killing at least 4 in the Bicol region. The storm brings powerful winds and heavy rain just weeks after Super Typhoon Ragasa's devastation. All right, starting with our top story. Well, Britain is pressing the United States over the new pharmaceutical tariffs announced by President Donald Trump. UK officials also warned of the impact on industry and emphasized the importance of pharmaceuticals to the economy. This comes as the US president said that 100% tariffs will apply to branded and patented drugs from the 1st of October, unless companies have started building manufacturing plants in the US. Meanwhile, the European Commission said it has agreed to a 15% ceiling on US pharmaceutical tariffs. This move acts as an insurance policy for European companies exporting to America. The EU says that the deal shields European pharma firms from new US tariffs. Irish Trade Minister Simone Harris confirmed the ceiling remains in place. Underlining the value of the agreement, officials also continue to discuss implementation and potential exemptions for other products. On the other hand, Malaysia is also negotiating with the United States, seeking zero tariffs on certain exports and exemptions for goods not produced in America. Trump also announced duties on kitchen cabinets, furniture and heavy trucks, citing national security and domestic manufacturing. All right, well, 100% tariffs on a number of pharmaceutical products from the 1st of October. It is something which has shaken up the entire world, as America was one of the largest importers in the world when it came to pharmaceutical products and services, including some high-profile medicines as well, which the Americans did not manufacture but imported from the rest of the world. Well, Mr. Mark Sutherland, geopolitical commentator, is going to be joining us from London very shortly. But let's again apprise you that 1st October 2025 is the date when the 100% tariff or the drug tax is going to be implemented by the Americans. A lot of people are also of the view that this is a very short turnaround time for any preparations to be made at this point in time. Mark, I hope you can hear me. Thank you for joining us.
Good to be with you. Thank you very much.
All right, Mark, this is a very worrying 100% tariff, which has been announced by Donald Trump in a slew of other tariffs which he has imposed on various countries for various reasons. But the fact of the matter is, and experts also believe, that pharmaceutical industry is a sensitive one. A turnaround time of a few days might also put lives at risk, and the supply chain is going to suffer drastically. Now, the UK has also taken upon itself, to knock some sense into this kind of a knee-jerk reaction. What are your thoughts?
As we always say in these situations, it all depends which side of the fence you are on and how you want to view it. We know in discussions ever since President Trump came in, we also know during his campaign that he's always felt that America has been treated very, very unfairly in regard to this whole debate over the balance of payments. And so he has thought that he wants to readdress that. He wants to see jobs going back into America, because for many years under NAFTA and GAFTA, seeing jobs go out, seeing many factories leave America and then end up in China at that time for a number of years, where labor rates were extremely cheap, and it then becomes the manufacturing center of the world. And then, of course, that brings geopolitical change, and that is why the president is motivated in this particular way. When we talk about big pharma, then it's interesting because we have two Swiss companies that are promising to then transfer factories to America, and that is what the president is looking at, sir.
Well, I understand that the president wants to generate jobs at home, but setting up plants, setting up companies is not something that, can happen overnight. It's not a genie in a bottle that can make your dreams come true. Obviously, do you think that Donald Trump should have given some leverage in terms of time for, all the exporters of big pharma products to respond?
Well, after the Biden administration, after the COVID, after we've seen a world lockdown, after the destruction, in his eyes, understandably, of the American economy during the COVID years, then he has been very, very keen to rebuild that as fast as he can. The figures that came out in regard to the Biden administration turning around and saying we have created these jobs, that has now been in question by the Trump administration. I understand what you're saying. When it's understandable, the last thing we want to see is people's lives at risk. But also, Trump is then also concerned about the price of pharmaceuticals in America, and then believes that by encouraging factories to come to America, that those prices and the access of American citizens to those pharmaceuticals will be greater, but also the prices will come down. And you're quite, it's a very important question, but at the end of the day, if you are the #1 economy in the world, and you then then every other country wants to benefit by that, you are then looking at the benefits within your own country. And also the onus is on individual nations to then get the situations in their own countries sorted out as well, where in regard to access to their own citizens to all pharmaceuticals, if that's what needed in those situations. So
you're quite right. Mark, stay with us. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan has stated that his meeting with US President Donald Trump has enabled progress on several vital issues. Both the leaders met at the White House on Thursday following Erdogan's speech at the UN General Assembly in New York. Speaking to journalists on his return from Washington, Erdogan has reiterated his support for Trump's vision of global peace, stressing that there is mutual will to stop the bloodshed and reach a ceasefire in Gaza, with lasting peace in Palestine a priority. The Turkish president has also noted the participation of Syrian President Ahmed al-Shara at the UN General Assembly, and it was crucial for the global legitimacy of the new Syrian government. Additionally, he has highlighted steps to improve defense cooperation with the US through extensive and constructive talks. On economic cooperation, Erdogan has said that he has discussed measures to facilitate trade, including revising tariffs, aiming for a $100 billion trade volume. He has further added that the European Commission has agreed to a 15% ceiling on US pharmaceutical tariffs, acting as an insurance policy for European companies as well. All right, Mark Sutherland, geopolitical commentator, still with us. Mark, what do you make of the meeting between, the Turkish leader and Donald Trump? Of course, the agenda has, in the past, always been about the ongoing situation in Gaza. Donald Trump very recently went on to say that it's going to prevent Israel from annexing West Bank or Gaza, and that is something which the Arab world has also hailed. But the big question is, will Donald Trump stick to what he has said?
This is, I believe, their first meeting in the White House for 6 years. We've had the Biden administration in between. And so let's bear that in mind. Also, there are concerns about the fact that Turkey is looking to buy a Russian air defense system. There is also concern about the fact that Turkish want the US deal in regard to the F-35. We have to remember that Turkey is a member of NATO. But we've just seen, the now new leader of Syria speak at the UN. Turkey has strong relationships with that, and has been involved, in my opinion, with getting rid of Assad. We have to also put in context, we don't have time in many ways to go through a heck of a lot of history, but Turkey wasn't very happy with Israel then bombing and protecting the Druze of Syria. This comes down to this new Syrian regime and what forces have done there in regard to attacking Druze, in regard to attacking Christian communities there as well. We have to remember that this individual, his terrorist links in the past, ISIS, and at one point America had a big price on his head. Why am I saying all this? Because all of this has to be put in, like everything, in a historical context. It isn't just quickly looking at a quick byline to grab the headlines presently. We have to look in the past. And also, Erdogan then has always wanted to be, the new sultan, and in many ways to reenact the Ottoman Empire and the history of that. Now, they also are concerned about the sanctions that the Americans have had on Turkey. There is also the huge Kurdistan situations to still sort out with the PKK. One of their leaders has been imprisoned, and talk about laying down weapons. And I am just pointing out that the situation is extremely, extremely complex. And Trump, of course, it's about business. It's about building those relationships, and that is what he would then like to do. So it's good that people are talking to each other. Of that, there is no doubt. But there is a lot on the table, and as we've seen in regard to trying to bring the war to the end between Israel and Gaza, and of course, there's been discussions about that, and discussions about that with other leaders in that region. But we also have to remember the history, sir.
All right. Absolutely right. We also have to remember the history. Mark, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Well, as Israeli bombardment continues on Gaza's main urban center, its military has sent a new warning that it plans to attack more besieged areas. Israeli spokesperson Avichai Adrai said in a statement that urgent warning to all those who have not yet evacuated the Gaza port area and the Rimal neighborhood and the tents next to it on Amin al-Hussein Street. Israeli forces advanced deeper into Gaza City on Thursday as Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu headed to New York to address the United Nations General Assembly, with US President Donald Trump pursuing a deal to end the Gaza war. Meanwhile, displaced Palestinians who fled Israel's offensive in Gaza City described harsh living conditions in central Gaza, where they took refuge. Let's listen into a Palestinian civilian.
طلعنا الضرب فوق روسنا يا عم، الطيارات بتضرب والمدفعية بتضرب علينا. ضلناش مكان هناك نقعد فيه. طلعنا خوف على الأولاد وخوفنا إنه يصير لنا حاجة كمان، طلعنا شراد من غاده. حتى عفشنا ما أخذناش عفش معانا كمان. غدا احنا جينا على تبت نويرة هنا، رحنا على حماد ورجعنا على تبت نويرة، ما لقيناش وسع بالمرة في حماد. ناس فوق بعضها هناك قرب كدس. انه دول العالم تعترف فلسطين لكن ما حدش ندور على فلسطين يا عمي، لا دول العالم ولا دول غير العالم. مسايبين لنا سنتين واكثر من سنتين مسايبيننا تحت الناس الظلمه هذول، مش عارف ليش انا. ولا واحد قادر من الدول العربيه يدخل لنا كوبايه مي علينا، ولا واحد قادر يقول لهم يعني اسكتوا خلص معي بكفيهم. وين دول العالم اللي بيقولوا عنها هذه؟ وين العرب؟ وين المسلمين؟ وين احرار العالم؟
All right, Yossi Cooper-Wasser, Israeli intelligence and security expert, is joining us from Tel Aviv. Yossi, appreciate you taking out the time and speaking with us. Well, first up, there is going to be more penetration into Gaza. The war, as we know, has been changing course for the last few days as well. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu also at the UNGA. But at the same time, a lot of criticism also pouring in from certain European countries. How are you looking at this situation evolving in the next few days, with even Donald Trump weighing in that he's going to stop Israel from any kind of an annexation activity?
Well, we have to, first of all, thank you for having me. Secondly, I would say that we have to separate between the various issues that are on the table simultaneously. The application of Israeli law in the West Bank is one issue and the war in Gaza is another. In the war in Gaza, we are approaching the end stage, and that's why the stakes are high. And we are asking for the population of Gaza City to evacuate the city, especially in a certain specific area where the fighting is taking place. That's important that they evacuate this place because we don't want to hurt the civilians. And we have prepared areas for the civilians south of Gaza City where they can be provided with whatever they need and stay away from harm's way. That's what we are trying to accomplish in Gaza City. And all of that could have been avoided had the Hamas released the hostages and lay down their arms. Of course, this can all be avoided very easily if this was the case. But since they refuse, we have to keep putting the pressure and remove them from power by force, unfortunately. And that's what's happening in Gaza. This is extremely important because Hamas cannot stay in power. There's a proposal now being promoted by President Trump with 21 articles. We don't know the details of which, but if this proposal does not include the removal of Hamas from power and them laying down their arms, this is not going to fly. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem that with the American pressure, it's enough to convince Hamas to do that, especially because they enjoy the support of the Europeans. Europeans, instead of putting pressure on Hamas, they put pressure on Israel. And that's something very strange. And still we have to live with it. That's the situation. This requires us to put more pressure on Hamas directly instead of the Europeans that could have done the same without the military means that we use.
All right. Yossi, appreciate you joining us. Thank you so much. Well, Iran and Russia have signed a $25 billion deal to build nuclear power plants in the Islamic Republic, with sweeping UN sanctions on Iran likely to follow. The deal has been signed with Russia's state nuclear corporation, Rosatom. The agreement with Rosatom expands partnership that produced the Bushehr plant, Iran's only reactor, which has not been seen as a significant proliferation risk. Russia previously built Iran's first and so far only nuclear power plant at Bushehr, which began operating in 2010. Rosatom has reportedly said that it signed a memorandum of understanding on the construction of small nuclear power plants in Iran without giving a number. All right, Mohammed Osman, International Relations Specialist, is joining us from Cairo at this point in time. Mohammed, thank you for joining us. Well, what does this mean for Iran, considering the fact that just a few weeks ago, there was an attack on Iran by, the United States and Israel, of course, for, having nuclear capabilities or, aspiring to have nuclear capabilities. What does this mean for Iran? Do we, in fact, brace for more sanctions coming their way now?
Thank you for having me. Always a pleasure to be with you. Well, of course, the timing of the announcement of this huge Russian investment in Iran's nuclear infrastructure comes at a time when the Europeans, the European Troika, the E3, Germany, France, and the United Kingdom have activated the snapback mechanism in order to reimpose sanctions on Iran on account of their alleged violation of Iran's alleged violation of the 2015 nuclear agreement. And these sanctions are to go into effect within a few hours on the 27th of September 2025. Of course, so the timing of the announcement of the Russian investment has its sheer symbolism. It is a testament or a demonstration of support for the Iranians, especially that Russia and China in the Security Council just a few days ago have vouched for extending the nuclear agreement and preventing the activation of the snapback mechanism. However, they were not successful in preventing the activation of the mechanism, unfortunately. So now the region is poised towards further escalation, and it seems that the Europeans are complicit one way or the other in a future potential renewal of conflict between and hostilities between Israel, the United States on one side, and Iran. It seems that the Russians are interested in propping up the Iranians, but however, at the same time, also so that we make things clear, the Bushehr nuclear power plant is completely unrelated to the controversial nuclear facilities of Iran. It is a nuclear power plant. It was built by the Russians, as you rightfully said at the beginning of your presentation, and also now it's being expanded with 8 more nuclear units. And even during the war, the 12-day war between Israel and Iran, Israel never targeted the Bushehr nuclear power plant, and Russia even issued a stern warning to the Israelis not to do that because over 200 Russian engineers and technicians work in the Bushehr nuclear power plant. So it is treated as a civilian target, and it's off limits due to Russia's presence in it. However, at the same time, I do question Russia's ability or even intent or commitment to support Iran fully in a future potential confrontation with Israel and the United States.
All right. Mohammed, appreciate you joining us as always. Thank you. Well, in the latest development from war in Ukraine, Russia's defense ministry has claimed that its forces have taken control of Yunakivka. The front lines remain active despite continued efforts towards peace talks between the leaders of Russia and Ukraine. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky, speaking at the United Nations General Assembly, warned against the expansion of Russian aggression to other countries. Meanwhile, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has accused NATO and the European Union of using Ukraine against Russia. Russian spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has called President Zelensky's threat of hitting Kremlin as irresponsible. The fresh escalations lower the prospect of a possible meeting between President Putin and Zelensky. And Myanmar's Janta leader, Senior General Min Aung Hlaing, met with Russian President Vladimir Putin at the Kremlin in Moscow. This is Min Aung Hlaing's second meeting with Putin in 2025, signaling Russia to continue support for the internationally sanctioned regime. They discussed about enhancing their military ties and cooperation in sectors such as electricity. They also discussed about deepening diplomatic energy and investment ties. Aung said that his administration supports Russia's right to self-defense, and he's in Russia to attend the World Atomic Week Forum in Moscow, which kicked off yesterday and will run until the 28th of September. Well, the first formal trial of South Korea's ousted President Yoon Suk-yeol has opened today in Seoul as a special prosecutor pursued additional charges of obstructing official duties and abuse of power linked to last year's martial law crisis. The case focuses on allegations that Yoon interfered with an arrest warrant and violated cabinet members' rights during the declaration of emergency rule. The Seoul Central District Court convened this morning to hear the new case. This marks Yoon's first appearance in 85 days after missing 11 hearings in his separate insurrection trial. Reportedly, the new indictment carries a prison term of more than 3 years on conviction, and Yoon already faces the death sentence or life in prison if found guilty on these charges. All right, well, French far-right leader Marine Le Pen has said that sentencing former French President Sarkozy to a prison sentence which applies immediately rather than awaiting an appeal is extremely serious for the country's judicial system. This comes as Sarkozy was handed 5 years in jail for criminal conspiracy over efforts by his close aides to procure funds for his 2007 presidential bid from Libya during the rule of Muammar Gaddafi. His former presidential rival, Le Pen, who was herself convicted in March of embezzling EU funds and given an immediate 5-year ban on running for office, attacked the neutrality of the judges who made the rulings. Le Pen's appeal against her embezzlement conviction, which barred her from running in the 2027 election, will start on the 13th of January. Let's listen into what the French far-right leader had to say.
J'ai été extrêmement étonné parce que j'ai bien compris quand même qu'un certain nombre de magistrats ont une sorte de tableau de chasse où ils essayent d'épingler un maximum de politiques. Alors vous imaginez bien un ancien président de la République, il est tout en haut du tableau. Ce qui est sûr, c'est que cette décision qui intervient après la mienne pose tout de même un problème majeur, qui est qu'un certain nombre de juridictions, aujourd'hui, font totalement fi du double degré de juridiction. C'est-à-dire qu'en France, on a le droit à un double degré de juridiction. C'est dans notre état de droit, c'est-à-dire qu'on a le droit de faire appel. Et on est considéré comme présumé innocent jusqu'à ce qu'on soit condamné de manière définitive. Or, ils prennent des mesures, l'inéligibilité avec exécution provisoire en ce qui me concerne, le mandat de dépôt en ce qui concerne Nicolas Sarkozy, qui en réalité ont vocation à s'appliquer avant même
immédiatement
que les magistrats d'appel, qui devraient commencer à en être agacés, prennent leurs décisions. C'est une sorte de rupture, je trouve, avec les grands principes de notre droit et avec le premier de ces grands principes qui est la présomption d'innocence.
All right, well, this is all we have time for. We will continue to bring you more updates from around the world.